Hey everybody, Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having a great day. I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can here. I think it's a good learning opportunity and a good topic of discussion that I'm going to touch on here. Before I do that, I want to thank those of you who have responded to my request for help with the young black mother who is in jeopardy, literally life or death jeopardy. If you want to know more about that and you want to be a part of the solution, go to the video entitled Black Mother. I forget the name of the title, but it's the video right before this one on my channel. It's entitled Black Mother, caught between PD and gang violence. And she's already had one daughter that has been, both daughters were shot. One was shot in the arm and the face. I can't give out details online because she's still in that city and she's caught between two dangerous forces. But if you want to know more, just go watch the video, because there is a way that you can learn more if you need to know more. But basically, we are relocating her and getting her started with a new path and away from violence, so those kids can get the help they need to be healthy, so she can get the emotional and psychological support she needs, because she's an emotional wreck. But we definitely need help to make that happen. For those of you who did respond, thank you. But we definitely need a lot more support. So go watch that video. All the information you need to be a participant is there. If you need more information, email me on the email address I give you in the video, and I will personally send you more information to kind of introduce you to the situation, so you can see this woman, see what she's going through, what she's been going through for the last 2+ years. And it's very convoluted. It's so much to break down, and I'll even explain it if I have to personally. But I'll send you information via email so you can see, but we need your help with that. And now that that's out of the way, again, I thank those who have responded, whether you responded by giving or responded with well wishes and encouragement, whatever. Thank you. Now, those of you, I have someone who's been weighing in on my talk about Stephen A. and the assessment I did of Jason Whitlock's dragging of Stephen A. and the points that he made. It's a couple of people weighing in that feel like I've, gone too hard and they see things differently. I'm not even here about that. You have a right to your opinion. I base my assessments not on my feelings or how I see things on the surface. I base it on the ultimate undercurrent and movement of things in society and how it impacts my people as a whole. So what seems to be on the top very rarely is, and you have to be very well versed in racial caste lingo, in the code and the language and the presentations and the symbols. Because somebody gives back to the community doesn't mean they're actually empowering the community. Very rarely is that the case. That is a presentation in order to give the appearance of helping and being a part of the solution. It's one way to build trust, so that people trust what they say and what they do. It's so much more than just about sports. But what's interesting here, to prove my point, and the reason I'm actually doing this, someone that I have derided for years because of the bull crap that he does and says, and how he handles things. And I'm not simply talking about an opinion. I'm talking about the way he goes about doing things and some of the things he says. Charles Barkley actually said something, and I believe it happened last night or the night before, about the playoffs, and the point was absolutely valid. I have no problem divorcing messages from messengers. So if a person says something that's valid and is powerful enough, I'm going to repeat it. And I'm going to say who said it. Doesn't mean that I'm a fan of the person. Doesn't mean that I even like the person. But the truth is the truth. And it doesn't matter who tells it. Now, to some people, it's hard to take from people but I've learned a long time ago, if you divorce the message from the messenger, the message is so much easier to devour and digest. We get caught up in people. That's why we're always disappointed. That's why we're always frustrated, because we get caught up in people. We get caught up in personalities. And then when we find out that the person is human, we don't know how to process their humanity because we placed them on a pedestal. That's what I tell people all the time. Fact check me. Research me. Look at what's going on. I don't need you to be my fan. I need you to be a listener in a way that challenges you to think critically. Sometimes the way you think will be in diametric opposition to the way I think, and I'm okay with that. But what I don't want you doing is just being blindly led by propaganda and the media power structure that dictates narratives and controls behavior. And so here's the thing. It was a passing statement, something that's said a million times, and I may be exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure at some point it'll reach a million if it hasn't. When a sports coach is fired, there is literally a code language that if you understand it and pay attention, you'll know whether the coach was white or not. Now, there's a reasoning behind it and why it's important. It's not just, a distinction. It's a distinction with a purpose. And here's what I mean by that. Portland Trailblazers and I believe Orlando Magic fired their coaches. Now that's the truth. But both of the coaches was white. So the way that the press release went was they parted ways. Now, you've heard this before. So-and-so team has parted ways with head coach, or head coach turned in resignation or resigned. Now, anybody who understands business and has been in business and understands things on an executive level understands that often when someone isn't performing at the level they should and you are about to let them go, you can do one of two things. You can demand a resignation or you can fire them. When you demand a resignation, they turn in the resignation. It looks like they resign their position. It goes into their permanent file as they resign their position. But when you ask for a resignation as an executive and as a boss, you are in all actuality firing them. But you are giving them an opportunity to go out and take their experiences without the blemish of saying they were fired. Why? Because when you say you fired someone, you fired them. Why? Because they failed, because they didn't live up to the expectations, because they did not do what they want. Now that's on any level. When you look at it and it's being presented in code at this level, why is it important? Because it carries down into mainstream America. This is what operating in a white racial caste system looks like. It's coded. It's out there. Now, when a black coach, with the exception of a few, and I think it was pointed out, when Doc Rivers left the Clippers, he was forced out, and they said they parted ways. But that's not normally the case. The normal case is so-and-so got fired. So-and-so fired. Head coach Barkley was fired. He was let go. And that sends out a message, what? That he couldn't get the job done. There's a negative connotation that goes with being fired that puts a particular image up. So in essence, we're going to protect our people through language, code language. They didn't do the job. They didn't do the job in the same way that the black coach didn't do the job for that team. But the difference is we're going to say they resigned, and we're going to say they parted ways. We parted ways like it was a mutual agreement. Like we sit down and we talked about it, and we just couldn't come to an agreement. And so they're gone. They made a choice to say, okay, it's over. We said, okay, cool. And that's not what happened. It was like, hey, basically, we're asking you for your resignation. In other words, we're firing you, but we're going to give you an opportunity to take your experience here without the blemish of saying you were fired. Now, those who really know, but the grand scope of things is the way it's presented to the public is not the same way, because those two terms are not processed in the brain subconsciously the same. Even when you know what's going on, it's not processed. It's just not processed. One carries a much more negative connotation than the other. It's just that simple. Now, what happens is that's not the only way that's happening. That's the point I'm getting. There's constant code in the language of how things are being done. And what we have to understand, if we're going to navigate this, is we've got to be able to interpret code, but we also got to be able to create our own code. We also have to be able to create situations where we're in control. And it's a different thing when you are not the person being fired, but the person doing the firing. You're not the person being hired, but the person doing the hiring, or the entity or the company doing the hiring and the firing. We don't have any control over things that we provide the value and commodity for. Professional sports ownership should be dominated by blacks. Why? Because we make up 72 to 75% of the population in pro basketball and pro football. That should be reflected in ownership, because without that talent, that particular product doesn't exist. You take away black talent from any one of those sports, and the product is a shell of what it once was. You've got to understand the value you bring to the table, and you've got to leverage that value to produce opportunities for yourself. That's business. If you don't use your value to leverage opportunity, and you simply allow people to throw money at you because of your value, at some point that value will diminish, especially when you're talking about the product being physical. It diminishes with age and wear and tear. And therefore, that value will not always be what it is. And at some point, it won't have any value, and you won't be able to demand any money, and you will have to walk away from it, because when you had the value, you didn't leverage it. You didn't understand the codes that were being put out there. You didn't understand the lingo, the language that was being put out there. And it cost you in the end road. Within 3 years of retiring from the NFL, 70+% of the players are broke. Poor money management, poor decisions, but more importantly, didn't play the long game. They didn't leverage their immediate value for long-term value. You know, I've seen a couple of people do it. Magic did it, Michael Jordan did it, some players in the Major League Baseball did it. But for the most part, there is this systemic catalog of fear based on moving against what's white. Don't upset it. Don't disturb it, but that's a part of evolution. Evolution is about disturbance and adaptation. It's about sitting up and saying, I don't like what's going on. I'll adapt, I'll move, I'll change. We have got to do a better job. But like I said, what he said was on point. And from what I hear, it shook Ernie Johnson. If you know Ernie Johnson, everything I've heard about him, he's a cool dude. He's the host of the show, the producer of the show. He's a cool dude, you know, as white dudes go. But it shook him because it caught him off guard. And the thing is, everybody else on the show that's visible to the camera is black. Then another reporter comes on that they're trying to go to kind of get away from the topic, and he's shaking his head, agreeing with Charles. Everybody knows that you're handled differently because you're black, but we live in a world where they want to constantly tell us that we are not judged by our skin, that no one sees color, that we're in a post-racial America. No. You've got to be totally disconnected and your head buried in the sand to believe that your race doesn't matter, that the melanin in your skin doesn't come with some challenges. And the thing is, it also comes with some great assets. And the thing that I try to get people to focus on, the liabilities are going to be there because they're external. Your liabilities as being a black person aren't internal. They tried to sell us on the fact that we were intellectually inferior. They tried to sell us on the fact that we were inherently animalistic and criminal minded. They tried, but we've brought some scholars forth, some well-researched academicians. I've been one that's been writing and putting forth much material that counters that argument of intellectual inferiority. It started way back with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Dr. Naeem Akbar and Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Howard Clark, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin, and Dr. Claude Anderson, just to name a few, that came along decades ago and started to move against that. And then there's a second wave of us who have sit up and actually, from an intellectual perspective, from a scholarly perspective, sit up and brought an argument that can be proven against that. So the intellectual inferiority argument had to go. We've also brought much contribution to the argument of criminality, inherent criminality, and black on black crime, and so much more. And so that has to go. So everything that's being moved against us that has any true validation isn't coming from internal. It's not coming internally. It's not an internal or endogenous origin. It's from the outside. It's exogenous. It's them coming up with ways to interfere with our progress, to inhibit and prohibit our progress, and to make it all but impossible for us as a collective to advance. It's our responsibility to figure out the solutions, to get outside of the complaining and the whining and come together and come up with ideas and solutions of how we're going to do something. There's no advantage to complaining. There's no advantage to whining. There's no progress in whining. It is in the solution. It's in perseverance. It's in the base of a relentless ideology. It's in sitting up and making up in your mind that you're going to do something about it. That's where we gain ground. That's where we make a difference. That's where we're going to overcome. But I just had to bring that out. I had to talk about that because most people aren't aware of the coded language that is used to create images and ideas and how we view people. I'm gonna get ready to get off of here. I just had to bring that. Running some last minute errands, just left the office, running some last minute errands, gonna hit the gym, then I gotta go take care of some things at home for a baby, and then I'm gonna try to unwind. But again, for those who showed some love in helping out this young lady that we're helping, like I said, once we get her somewhere safe, I'm actually gonna introduce you to her, but until we get her somewhere safe, they've proven that they're willing to cause harm. They've already harmed her babies. They're sending out threats over social media to this family. And so go check out the video. It's the video before this one. Black mother caught between PD and gang violence. Check it out. It's something like that. Check it out. Act accordingly. Whatever that is for you, act accordingly. But hey, we've got to do better in thinking. We've got to do better in planning. We got to do better in the action we take. We can't sit idly by and expect anybody else to fix our problems. That's never going to happen. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day.